topic was the commodification and aestheticization of joy, focusing on how media and film really sell, package, and distort joy and happiness as a whole. And so my research question was, how do temporary media and films transform joy into a marketable aesthetic, and how does this shape cultural expectations of happiness? And kind of like the thought process throughout this question was that, first of all, joy is everywhere in media, and then including like holiday ads, like influencers and social media, but joy often looks staged, curated, or performative. And something that I personally noticed like recently, specifically are like holiday aesthetics, social media like happy content, and scenes of joy in film. And this led me to wonder if this is this what real joy looks like, or if this is just a product that is made to be sold. And the key concepts in terms of joy was for aestheticization. I was focusing on how this emotion was turned into a visual style, commodification, which is selling an emotional state, and the performance of joy, which is displaying happiness as a social currency, and the difference between the joy media and actual joy. And for this research project, it was mostly just like a qualitative kind of based study. Obviously, it's a little hard to kind of condense this down to numbers. It's mostly just based on like what is observed in media. So these three things, in addition to like some background academic research, was included. So I used like 4 different sources, and this was kind of just the main summary that I pulled from each one. So first of all, scholars argued that emotions are shaped by cultural narratives. Capitalism turns feelings into economic products. Media creates cruel optimism around happiness, imagery, and social platforms encourage emotional performance. So kind of the gap between actual joy and the joy that is kind of marketed in media is that it kind of becomes an aesthetic and a commodity across these different mediums. So the first section that I was focusing on was ads, and kind of viewing how joy is framed as being something that's attainable through purchase and spending. So some examples of this is that like recently, obviously like with the holiday seasons coming up, with the campaigns in like places like Starbucks, they are like attributing joy to seasonal products, saying that this is tied to the holidays and you have to like buy our drinks to get that holiday joy. Also, a lot of wellness brands use joy as a part of like beauty routines and self-care purchases. Travel ads use joy as an escape and an aesthetic environment to kind of pull people into thinking that they're going to achieve this state if they go wherever they need to go. And this kind of shows that joy becomes a purchasable experience, and emotional fulfillment is tied to spending. And a lot of these kind of campaigns use a lot of aesthetic visual cues like warm lighting and different color palettes that kind of indicate to the people, like when you're seeing it, you know that this is like a positive thing. And marketing teaches audiences that happiness is something that you can buy into. Moving on to kind of how this is portrayed in social media, the effect of this is that users start kind of gauging their own happiness and kind of comparing it to the ones that they see on these social platforms, and kind of, I guess, alter their perspectives and also maybe diminish their own ideas of joy. And this shows that joy must be visible to be valid. It needs to be shown to the world and to the people around you. And this is obviously shown in different platforms like Instagram or like YouTube and TikTok. And a lot of these trends encourage optimized happiness. So this really means that social media promotes joy as a performance, and users have to kind of curate joy for audiences and not for themselves. And a lot of the actual joy that comes in everyday life, like quiet, relational, or imperfect joy, is devalued because it's not a big enough deal to be shared with others. And these platforms shape emotional expectations through algorithmic happy content. So the final section was the research on film, and the impacts of this was shaping emotional expectation through media portrayals in cinema. And so with film, this really shows a lot of big joy moments like proposals, reunions, celebrations, and confetti finales are just like the most obvious ways that joy is indicated in cinema. And joy is usually the reward at the end of a narrative arc. And a lot of visual cinematic techniques include warm lighting, swelling music, slow motion, golden hour shots, and specifically films like Barbie or Inside Out actually kind of like embody or like brand joy as a product or like an actual like subject itself. And this really shows that films teach that joy must be dramatic, perfect, and transformative, and like a very big like changing point in someone's life. And real joy doesn't seem enough compared to these spectacles that are shown. And joy becomes scripted, predictable, and commercial. And these movies kind of reinforce those same ideas of the emotional, unrealistic templates that people compare themselves to. This was just a short clip from 500 Days of Summer. This was just like, there's a scene in the movie where there is a reality versus expectation of one of the characters, and I think okay, I don't really know how to make it bigger, but
if you click on it, can you click on it?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Tom walked to
If you have to make it bigger down there, maybe on the right there.
Thank you.
her apartment, intoxicated by the promise of the evening. He believed that this time his expectations would align with reality.
Nice. You're tired. What are you talking about? Good. That's so nice. Thank you. You should have. That's so nice. Thank you so much. I'm excited.
So Tom, what is it that you do?
I write greeting cards.
Tom could be a really great architect if he wanted to be.
That's unusual. I mean, what made you go from one to the other?
I guess I just figured, why make something disposable like a building when you can make something that lasts forever, like a greeting card? What?
Okay. I think that is just kind of like a good example of a lot of times. A lot of like the small everyday moments are kind of just like obviously like very much amplified in cinema just to, you know, it's not as fun to like watch something that is just dull as just like reality, so it's definitely more amped up in a lot of films, and I think that's a pretty good side-by-side comparison that kind of shows that. And so just overall, this kind of reveals that media kind of offers an aesthetic template for joy that people think that they have to kind of fit into and kind of like mold their own emotions into as well. And real joy becomes compared to cinematic or branded joy and often minimized during that process. And this kind of creates an emotional pressure on people and unrealistic expectations. And oftentimes this kind of confuses people like with joy and actual consumption or perfection. And the importance of this is that it really helps explain why people may not feel joyful enough, even though that they are happy at times. Like, it doesn't obviously live up to the things that they're seeing and consuming every single day. And it really highlights the emotional consequences of media culture and opens conversations about real joy and the cultural contradiction of how joy is marketed, not lived in. And yeah, so just the conclusion, kind of just the same thing, that it's really sold and it just distorts people's perceptions. And I think this is just, yeah, just the references that were used. Okay, that's